Hi, my name's Cecilia Poullain, and welcome to this episode of Brave New Women. All around the world, there are amazing, ordinary women doing extraordinary things. Brave New Women is about giving those women a platform and a voice, and it's about changing the way that women are perceived. And it's a way of inspiring all of us to do the things that we've always wanted to do. Today, I'm talking to Caetlin Jopson, and Caetlin has already been on the podcast talking about her work with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia. So an amazing interview. And today, Caetlin is talking about a new phase in her medical career, which is dealing with obesity. So hi, Caetlin, welcome.
Hi, Cecilia. Thank you for having me.
So the conversion from being focused purely on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people to obesity. Tell me about that.
Well, about 5 years ago, I moved into mainstream general practice and fortunately still have a third of my patients Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. But we had a dietitian and diabetes educator working at the clinic with us. And anyway, she knew of my interest in diabetes due to all of the work I've done with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I mean, I'd see 3 to 4 diabetics a day. It was my bread and butter. So we wanted to start a clinic together to do some really cutting edge medicine, because I don't think diabetes is always that well managed in general practice. Anyway, so 4 years ago, we started off with a diabetes clinic. It was one day a fortnight, and our first clinic had one person. As time went on, there's some new medications became available, and Leanne, the dietitian, said, because when you're dealing with diabetes, it's actually a lot of it's about weight loss. And also then we were dealing with pre-diabetes or newly diagnosed diabetics. And what we were wanting to do is to get these people into remission, to cure them. And the way to do that is to lose weight. So we then just started focusing a little bit more on weight management, and it's just taken a mind of its own.
It's just taken off, has it?
Absolutely taken off. And interestingly, even since COVID, it's we call them the COVID kilos. But we're pretty busy. And yeah, so as of...
I've heard them called the COVID-19.
Yeah. And so as of next year, we'll be running a clinic all day, 1 day a week. So, and it's with a nurse, dietitian, and myself, and we're hoping to train up, another doctor and another dietitian. So, yeah, it's sort of becoming bigger than Ben-Hur. And the other thing that's kind of happened is there are not very many people doing what we do. It's a very untapped sort of area. And also because what we're doing is very different from what other people are doing. There's a greater understanding of the pathophysiology of obesity, why we're getting obese. And so because of that, it was actually recognised that Leanne and I are doing this really quite unique clinic. I was offered to do further training in obesity. So I've just completed a 3-month mentorship with an obesity expert. So, we feel like we've got lots of, knowledge behind us, but now we've also got 4 years of treating patients, and it's just going crazy, loving it.
Yeah, so you're really becoming one of the big obesity experts probably in the world.
Yeah, it's yes, probably. So I mean, there were 36 doctors that were given this opportunity, and 4 in Brisbane. So Brisbane's got 2 million people, so there's only 4 of us at the moment that are doing this sort of work. But obviously we need to. I mean, and that's what I'd like to do, is to train other people in this way, so that, because it works. So,
and how big a problem is it? Before we get into the solutions, let's look at the problem.
Well, okay. So first of all, I can say, for example, in Australia, 1 in 4 children and adolescents aged 2 to 17 and 2 in 3 adults are obese or overweight.
Wow.
One,
That is
one,
just amazing.
yeah, 1 in 3 adults in Australia are obese, and that's up from 1 in 5 over 20 years ago. Globally, obesity has tripled since 1976, and there are about 2 billion adults out of how many are we now? 7, 8? 7 over the age of 18 who are overweight or obese.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's huge. And the thing is that obesity is preventable.
Mm.
And the thing is with obesity, what does obesity cause? So from it, increases your risk of heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, musculoskeletal conditions, osteoarthritis. People need knee replacements, hip replacements, anxiety, depression, cancers, all sorts of cancers, breast, ovarian, prostate, liver. So, obesity has a huge clinical impact on people's lives. They die about 10 years younger. And even if you've had surgery, you can improve your life expectancy, but still be 3 years shorter.
When you say surgery, you mean surgery for?
As in, bariatric surgery. So a lot of the mortality statistics in obesity are related to the benefits of bariatric surgery. So that's
what is bariatric surgery?
So bariatric surgery, there are 3 main types. Is surgery that is used to treat obesity. You may have heard of the band surgery. So that's where they used to put a ring around the top of the stomach. Then there's this gastric sleevectomy, which removes 9/10 of the stomach. So the stomach's really small. And the other one is what we call a Roux-en-Y, which is basically they bypass the stomach altogether. The food goes straight into the small intestine. So all of them have degrees of success, and they're actually very interesting. They do actually change the physiology of the body so that you can actually have lasting weight loss, but they don't always last. That's sort of one of it. So my clinic, I certainly refer for bariatric surgery if I think it's appropriate, but we're trying to treat people medically. And about 10% of my patients are people who've gained weight after bariatric surgery. It's not failed, and we've got to take these words "fail" out of our language when we're talking about obesity, because it's actually really just a change in lifestyle. So, but we can get more into that.
So why are people? I mean, the statistics that you've just given us they are horrific.
Yep.
So why has it got so bad?
Well, what I always say to my patients when they come in and see me, I'll say to them, first of all, obesity is a genetic condition. It is hormonal, and it's not your fault. So it's got to do with many things in our community society. So we've got an obesogenic environment. So, for example, we're sedentary because we're sitting in front of computers, and then when we go shopping, you've got all this high-calorie food. But it's also how we're taught to eat as well, which is, eat everything on your plate or you won't get your ice cream, and, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and all of these things. And I'll go back to that. So, but the reason it's become the real reason it's become a problem, it's an anthropological reason. We're hunter-gatherers as humans. And so our body is made for feast and famine, but we are now living in permanent feast. So our weight is controlled by the hypothalamus, which is an ancient part of the brain that controls survival. It controls the very important functions of the body, like temperature control, blood pressure control, reproduction, and weight.
Where is the what is it?
Hypothalamus? Oh, deep inside in here. Somewhat in there. It's right back there. Anyway.
Right in the sort of the back center of the brain.
Yeah, it's a very ancient old part right in the centre. And so when it comes to weight control, we actually have 8 hormones that turn hunger on and 2 that turn it off. So, and the way that the body works is that if we start to restrict what we're eating, the body thinks that we're dying. And so it switches on the hunger hormones and says, get back on the savannah and get me some food now.
Mm.
And that's why it's so hard to withstand the hunger urges, because it's the organism trying to survive, just like we hold our breath and we can't breathe. So it's very important to understand that when people are overweight and obese, it's actually not their fault. Because that's their body. They're trying to not eat so much, but their body won't let them, because the body likes having a high weight, because it says, oh, it's fine, just waiting for the next famine. We're all right, don't worry. So, but we don't want to be like that, because we haven't worked out that actually the body hasn't worked out that that's not very good. So, I say to people, how did we get there in the first place? And so long-term control of our weight is controlled by 2 hormones, leptin, which is released by the fat cells, and insulin. Now, so when the fat cells are nice and full, the leptin levels do what they do. And when the fat cells are empty, the leptin levels change and make you hungry. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about leptin, not yet medically, as in a form of treatment, that is. And insulin is the other one. Now, insulin, most people will have heard of. Insulin is a hormone released by the pancreas in response to a carbohydrate meal. Carbohydrates are broken down in the gut to simple sugars, which are absorbed by the body, and then the sugars run around the bloodstream, and the insulin is what gets the sugar into the cells for energy, for heart, brain, muscle, etc. But the thing with insulin is it's very interesting. Insulin is like a fat-making hormone. So the way we've been taught to eat is you must always have your breakfast. So what do we have for breakfast? Carbs. What do we have for lunch? Carbs. What do we have for dinner? Carbs. And then maybe a bit of protein and a bit of fat. So our bodies are awash with insulin all the time. And if we've got any little bit of extra, leftover carb, it's like, oh, thank you, I'll just put that straight onto my stomach or onto my hips. So we really, we live in this obesogenic environment, but it's how we've been taught to eat that's also obesogenic. And the other message is that the low fat, i.e. high carbohydrate, because you've got to make the food taste good, has led to an obesity epidemic.
Wow.
So these are the things that, and the message has always been eat less, move more. The body doesn't do that. The body doesn't go, it does. If you eat less, it just pours out hunger hormones, and then you get hungrier, and then people gain weight. And that's why you get the up and down of weight gain. People can restrict themselves for so long, but then the hunger hormones are just too strong. So that's a sort of the pathophysiology of obesity. And
so when somebody comes into your surgery or into the clinic, how do you start working with them?
Well, so from a process perspective, we actually have they get seen by a nurse first, and they get the measurements, and then we get seen by a dietitian, and then she can look at the diet and their life and all that sort of stuff, and then they come and see me. So because I've got to do all the medical stuff, past history, medications, and look at the patient as a whole. We do use medications in the clinic that we have. I mean, obviously, if people don't want to use medications, they don't come and see a doctor. But if they, and we don't have to do medications, we can do other stuff. But what I say to people is, I'm not going to talk about your diet, because I'm not going to tell you what you can do and what you can't do. We're just going to start talking about things like, so we use different strategies like intermittent fasting. So what's good about intermittent fasting is, which I'm not sure if you know what that is, it's very popular these days. It's 16 hours of fasting and then 8 hours where you get your calories. And so it's a bit like delay, don't deny. So I don't tell people you can't have this and you can't have that. I say, but you can have them, but have them in this 8-hour window. And what it actually does, the fasting actually reduces your insulin levels and you move into ketosis, which is the fat burning phase. So, but there's other ways of doing that, like low carbohydrate. There's things like the very low energy diet using shakes, maybe just a low calorie diet. But these are all fine, but they're hard to keep up. So we use a number of medications that are appetite suppressants, and these are very new medications, and they're very exciting because they work. There's one, we use Saxenda, is a daily injection, and there's a new one on the market called Ozempic, which is a weekly injection, and they just make it easy. You don't feel hungry. They reduce stomach emptying, so you stay full longer. So that means that you're eating a half of what you always do. You're able to do some fasting. People say, I'm just not thinking about food all the time. And then they can start to make better choices, be mindful. And that's the sort of stuff that we're wanting to talk to people about. Most people know what to eat. They've got great health literacy, but it's using tools that help people to not be so hungry and fight against the body basically, and with it lose weight. So it's we see our patients regularly and we give them lots of support, because as I say to all of my patients, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And there's going to be hiccups along the way, roadblocks, and saboteurs, and their weight will plateau, and then we'll have to work through why has your weight plateaued.
There's a couple of things in what you were saying that I thought was interesting. One was you said that people are actually thinking about food less.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
absolutely.
What are the sort of psychological things that make us obese and that you can work off? Because I imagine that the way that we think about our bodies, the way that, and I've also heard that people who've suffered, extreme trauma or abuse are more likely to be obese. So what are the impacts of all those psychological effects?
Oh, absolutely. Many. So first of all, anxiety and depression as illnesses in themselves can increase people's appetite. Because a lot of people are emotional eaters. And these are the things that we uncover along the way. I say to my patients, this is a journey, and it's actually a journey of self-discovery, of self-awareness, because we're going to find along the way what are the roadblocks. So often I'll have an undiagnosed anxiety. I'll have an undertreated depression. So, it is, and what these things do is, like anxiety in itself can increase your cortisol levels, which increases your insulin release, which therefore puts you in, the fat making mode. Or just you're an emotional eater and you can't stop that. You can't override it, even though you've got good appetite suppression. But if you actually can treat the anxiety and depression, people have more control. As for trauma, absolutely, it's fascinating. The role of trauma as well, and that trauma can take, many forms. For example, it could be neglect as a child. So some children, for example, have been starved, and so food becomes something very important for them. There could be a form of abuse, and so food becomes a form of solace. I've got one very interesting patient who developed very young and received a lot of unwanted attention from men, and so she became obese to make herself sort of ugly, if you like. I mean, she wasn't ugly at all, but in her mind. But what that led to then was diabetes. And so then I started to look after her. I mean, she's in her 40s, and I had to get her to see a psychologist first to be able to break down that trauma of what happened when she was 12 and to work through that, to say it's okay to lose a little bit of weight. It was so embedded in her psyche. So that's the sort of interesting stuff that comes out through this journey, is to understand what are the things holding people back, what are the psychological things that are holding people back. Some people are never full, they're always hungry. Which is just fascinating. And they go onto these medications and they go, oh my God, for the first time in my life, I'm not hungry. And then interestingly, the other side of the coin of that is a lot of the medications that we use to treat psychological problems, so the antidepressants, actually cause weight gain as well. So, so you've got to be very careful with your choices of medications with patients.
Gosh. What about things like loneliness, or people feeling like they don't have, they've got a lack of purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I think that all comes under the mental health bracket, actually. So, I mean, in the end as well, if we had a patient coming in that was like that, we would try to go down through all the layers and see what's really going on. And, and obviously we try to make suggestions and, help them with all that sort of stuff. I've got a patient like that at the moment, actually. She's actually done very, very well. And she's lost, she was 110 kilos and she's now 68.
Gosh.
And she's got severe mental health issues. And she looks fantastic now. But my God, those are the issues that are all there. And, you just got to give people ongoing support. So I see her fortnightly. So, counselling and stuff like that.
So are you doing a lot of the psychological counselling, or do you?
Yeah. I mean, it's part of the job. What I try to do is just to find out what's going on. Why are you not achieving your goals? What are the things that are stopping you? So yes, I do a lot of the counselling. Obviously, if people need a lot more specific counselling, I'll refer on, because we're a bit time limited.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you say to people that there's some intermittent fasting.
Yep.
And then there's sometimes medication. And what are the other things that you recommend to people?
So we have a number of medications. I always say to people, treating, weight issues is a bit like diabetes and high blood pressure and things like that. We may need 2 medications. So often, we've got people on a couple of medications. We don't emphasize exercise. A lot of people will come in and they'll go, oh, doc, I'm so sorry, I've been slack, I've been exercising and all this sort of stuff. And I go, stop. Exercise has a very small role in weight management, unless you're a marathon runner or triathlete or something like that. It's not to say that it's not important. It's very important, because it's very important for heart disease and diabetes and depression and general well-being, but it doesn't have a role in weight loss. And the reason for that is 80% of our body's metabolic, so 80% of our energy is used up just in our metabolic rate, in just living. 10% is digestion of our food, and the other 10% is exercise. What I find is when patients come in, so say you've got somebody in front of you that's 150 kilos and they've tried everything and they're absolutely desperate and you're their last stitch chance. And, so first of all, you've got to be very non-judgmental. And then, and they don't want to hear the eat less, move more message. So what we do is at the end of the consultation, they go, you didn't tell me I have to do exercise, and you didn't tell me what I have to eat. And I go, I know, because that's not what this is about. Because in the end, ultimately, this is about the experience of losing weight, and it's got to be something that's forever. It's got to be sustainable, and it's got to be, they are the captain of their ship. We're there helping them to make it easy. So we give the strategies of like, well, how would you like to, do your diet? So we give people options, and we might move through them and do different ones. We tend to start with the intermittent fasting, and then we might add some low carbs to that, and then some people might need to add shakes. So then we'll unpick things and we'll go, ooh, alcohol. And, and, so we keep looking for those saboteurs. And then eventually people will tell you the truth that they're emotionally eating and they eat a packet of Tim Tams and all that sort of stuff. So, it's, so the treatment and
when they do that, so when they say to you, well, actually, I'm eating a packet of Tim Tams a day. So then how do you react to that? How does that get unpicked?
Oh, I just say, why? What's happening? What's there that is making you do that? I mean, this is an obvious saboteur for you. I had another interesting one is sleep apnea, because of course when you're obese, you get sleep apnea. You have poor quality sleep. People are tired. They drink Coke and Red Bull. What does that do? Keeps the weight back on. So, and people don't open up immediately for all of their naughtinesses, but you just let them, come out, and then but then you go, okay, well, look, what can we do about this? Let's focus on, these particular things. So that's why it's like a journey of self-awareness. And so the people get to understand themselves and what stopped them for so long losing weight.
So you would say to them, okay, let's focus on you eating a packet of Tim Tams a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would say, well, so when are you doing that? Are you doing that at a time when you're feeling a bit tired?
Yeah, tired, or are you stressed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having problems with my kids, and they just make me crazy, and so I, have a packet of Tim Tams or something like that. And so it's about working through the why.
Mm-hmm.
And then, don't say to people, I'm not say you can't have your Tim Tams. I'm not going to say that at all. But I'm going to say, well, maybe don't have a whole packet, have one or two, or if you really can't control it, just don't buy them, because, but in the end, they might substitute it with something else. So you've then got to work through the why, and and often that will just entail maybe some counselling, maybe putting them on an antidepressant, maybe even just acknowledgement. And it's actually funny. Some of the medications actually make the food taste yucky. So. Yeah. So what I might do is go, right, you're going on this tablet because it's going to make it.
And how often do you need to see people generally?
Fortnightly. Fortnightly initially, just to get them used to the medications and to the side effects, and then once people on the straight and narrow, monthly. And we've got lots of people who have achieved their weight goals, and we just catch up every 3 months. And and the so exciting things is you do their blood tests, and they're no longer diabetic, and they take them off blood pressure tablets, and it's fantastic. And they feel good. And that was actually the other thing I wanted to say was that with respect to exercise, what people, again, I don't talk about it in the first sort of few consultations, but people start losing weight and they come and they go, oh, Caetlin, I feel like exercising. I want to get out there. And it's just fantastic because, it's coming from them. So we do not tell people what to do. We are there to be there, guide them in a multidisciplinary approach.
But what I'm hearing when you say it's coming from them is that they've actually learnt to live again.
Yeah, Yeah, yep. I mean, that lady, the 150 kilos, I put her on Saxenda and I saw her a fortnight later and she'd lost like 4 kilos or something like that. And she said, I have not felt as good as this in years.
Wow.
And
Wow.
last time I saw her, I think she was down 12 kgs and just dirty, great big grin on her face. And yeah, it's so fantastic. So,
And it changes the whole way people think about themselves, how they think about their life.
oh, absolutely.
Oh.
And I love the whole thing that you can just focus on one condition. You can focus on weight management, and it's so far reaching. So it's sort of the opposite way. You know, normally when you're like looking after diabetes, you know, you're doing this, and this, but lots of medications and, you know, but here you do one thing, get the weight down, and you are treating blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, mood, self-esteem. They don't have aches and pains when they walk anymore. They may not need to have their surgery. It's just lovely to just that it's one condition, but it's far-reaching.
So, yeah, it's really changing people's lives.
It is,
just by changing one thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give some maybe? I mean, I'd love to hear some more success stories because they're so fantastic. If you can think of any.
I mean, it's interesting. We've got, interestingly, I've got lots of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people doing it, and they respond so well to these medications. I've got one girl; she's dropped 20 kgs. Aboriginal girl. She's just. Pardon?
How old is she?
49. And multiple medical problems, but just feeling so much better. We're going to go and try very soon to get the next 10, 20 down. So I now treat her husband and I now treat her sister, and and it sort of goes out like that. I think I mentioned that lady who was getting the counselling because of that trauma when she was about 12. We ultimately got her on the right combination of medications where she keeps her weight down, but her diabetes control is now perfect. So that's just been amazing. Yeah, I mean, what I think's fantastic is, the number of people we've got coming back just for 3 monthly checkups, and and they and we've just, people rave and their friends are all coming in. We've got little, like friend parties. I'm just trying to think of, that lady, 110 to 68. A lot of people don't have to be wildly obese. A lot of people will say 78 kilos, but they just want to get back down to 65. So I've got one patient who's very much like that. I'd always be seeing her for her lower back pain. Hasn't had lower back pain since she's lost her weight. So yeah, it's just they're all just sort of little stories. It's all about that individual thing for all of them, about what's how it affects them. It's a very personal journey for people, and I'm privileged enough to join them.
So there's 4 of you in Brisbane.
Yes, and 4 doctors have had the training.
Yeah, doctors have had this training, and how many in the rest of Australia?
There's 36 other doctors that have had this training. A lot of the obesity work's done in Melbourne. There's a very well-known professor, Joe Prieto, who's just an absolute mover and shaker. And he's run the first obesity clinic. It's probably in Australia, but it's in Melbourne. And there's other obesity clinics down there. So they're the real movers and shakers down there. And they're just wanting that message to come out to the rest of Australia, because, I mean, most doctors are still giving the wrong message. So, unfortunately.
And if we were going to eat, I mean, if you did have somebody who came in and said, doctor, can you just tell me exactly what I need to do, exactly what I should be eating, what I should be, how I should be exercising, when I should be eating? What would you say to them?
Okay. So I would say I actually have some printouts and stuff like that of if somebody wants to be very specific. So I would probably put them on intermittent fasting. So I would say you finish your dinner at 7 o'clock, but you can't have anything else. And then you fast. You can have water. You can have, if you're a bit hungry, you can have a handful of nuts or something like that, or a bit of roast chicken. And then you don't have breakfast. You can have, again, water. You can have coffee and tea with no milk and sugar. And then you can break your fast at, say, 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. And then at 11 a.m., you would have, depending how hard you want to go, if you want to go really hard, you have a shake. That's a very low energy diet. But otherwise,
what would be in the shake?
Oh, the shake would be their OptiFast. They're sort of a specific weight loss shake that have been designed to have the optimum nutrients, because ultimately food is about nutrition and energy. And so a lot of people, even with obesity, are actually malnourished because they're eating the wrong food. So when you're on these, when we're trying to lose weight, we want to make sure that people are still well nourished and so have all the vitamins and minerals. So that's what these OptiFasts have, is the right amount of those things. But otherwise, if they didn't want to do that, I'd say have a low carb meal. So a low carb meal, and I would, there's a choice of proteins that you can have. So chicken, pork, lean meat, fish, tofu. And then I have a list of vegetables that are all low carb. So, and I say, go for your life. You can have, nearly as much as you like of those. And then try to avoid snacking, and then have a good dinner at about 6 o'clock, finishing at 7 or whatever. And so then, we talk about things like mindfulness. So we say, well, and when you finished your meal, when we start the medication as well, we ask people to have half meals, because otherwise you'll feel sick. You get reflux from if you overeat, because the medication really guides you on how much you can and can't eat. As well, it doesn't make you're not hungry, but it also makes you full really quickly. So we talk to people about mindfulness, because what we want to do is teach people how to eat again properly. And so what that means is that you have your meal, and before going for seconds, you go, am I really hungry, or do I just want it? And so that's what we would teach and talk about. And so that's a sort of fairly prescriptive one. When we start initially, I like people just to get a feel for it, and then we can start, honing it down once they feel more confident. People need to lose a bit of weight first before they are confident in what you're doing, because I don't want to be just another person that tells them what to do, because it's got to fit in with their lifestyle.
Yeah.
I actually often relate to the Parisian women, and I say, Parisian women can eat what they like. They just eat small amounts. That's why they're skinny. So I don't say you can't have cheese. I don't say you can't have wine. We don't take anything out, It's
I think that's
just
great. I think what the Parisian women do, one of the things that the French do, is that food is important and taste is important, and not eating between meals is extremely important.
Yep.
So there's not 4 o'clock. There's no cakes at 4 o'clock.
Yeah. So that's absolutely no snacking. And if you are going to snack, it's not a carbohydrate. So these are the things that we talk about. So if a handful of nuts is okay. But have a glass of water, or have a cup of tea, or this or that. So and it's just trying to introduce new habits and say, and this is what you're going to be doing forever. But we also say there's flexibility. If on the weekend you want to have breakfast with people, that's fine, but maybe skip dinner. So, just it's rethinking food. And interestingly, one of the other saboteurs are friends and family. So, you might go out with a bunch of friends, and everybody else orders a big meal and you have a small meal. Oh, you're not eating enough. It's like, well, no, this is all I want to eat, or family. A lot of people express love through food. And, I've got one patient whose husband is a chef, and it's taken a long time, to get him to understand that she doesn't need to eat so much. She's got plenty of fuel on board. That's what I always say to them. You've got plenty of fuel on board. We just need to use that fuel. You don't. So the family and friends definitely can be and society as well.
I mean, I've heard about when it was our birthdays this weekend, and so my husband was saying, "Well, what are we going to eat? We should have a really fantastic meal." And I was thinking, well, actually, isn't it more important just the people being around the table and the conversation that we have? What we actually eat it's an expression of saying we're going to do something special because to make it a special occasion. But the thing that's important is who's around the table and what you're talking about and how you're interacting and all those sort of things. So
that's right. It's the experience, isn't it? Rather than, And I say that in weight management, it's not about the numbers. This is about the experience.
Yeah.
And it is. It's very interesting. I mean, we're human. We're part of our culture is to have feast and famine. Christmas time and all that sort of stuff. And I say to people, don't worry about Christmas. Aim for weight maintenance. I said most people do lose weight anyway, but don't get too worried about it. That is the time of feast. But then after that, okay, we have to do a bit of famine. So
we've covered a huge amount. Is there anything that we've forgotten?
I am not sure. I suppose the only thing for me is, and I'd probably just reiterate, I've already said it, is just to say that the way we're treating obesity and overweight now is completely different from before. We need to do it in a non-judgmental and remove stigma because ultimately it is a genetic and hormonal condition. It's not people's fault. They're not lazy. And that it's a journey of, really a journey of self-discovery, and it takes time and, commitment and dedication, but, within the right setting and especially with some of these medications, they're terrific tools that we can actually successfully treat obesity and overweight and make a really, a big impact on people's lives. And it's an absolute privilege to do it.
Well, thank you, Caetlin. I mean, I think I hope a lot of people hear the message, because I think when you say how much you can change people's lives and how much you can change their feelings about themselves, and how you can change all their other medical conditions, it is just such an important message. So I think it's fantastic you're doing this work, and I hope that a lot of other doctors hear about it, and a lot of other people hear the message that you're saying. So it's
so do I. yeah. So it's really great. So
great. Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Brave New Women. Certain podcast sites such as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Podchaser let you leave a rating and a review. The more ratings and reviews we get, the more people will listen, and the more these women's stories will be shared. So I'd really appreciate it if you could. Thanks for listening.